Now there's a brand new webpage, especially for this podcast. The Politicrat Daily Podcast can now be found on thepoliticrat.com, a brand new page that centralizes all of the places that you can listen to this podcast, the major platforms, and many others at thepoliticrat.com. Lots of content that you can see there right now and every single day. So subscribe now to the Politicrat Daily Podcast and make sure you visit thepoliticrat.com. Thank you. Welcome to the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore. It is Friday, January the 22nd, 2021. On this edition of the Politicrat, President Joe Biden, in his first 24 hours in office, he has signed 25 executive orders. A look at some of those orders, an excerpt of his speech from yesterday during a presentation of some more orders that he signed. Plus, we'll talk a little bit about Roe v. Wade. It is indeed the 22nd of January, which means another anniversary of the landmark U.S. Supreme Court decision that gave women the right to have an abortion. That and a couple of other items, including a movie called The Incident, a movie that I can't stop talking or thinking about. All of that coming up next.
Above all, our plan is to restore public trust. We will make sure that scientists and public health experts will speak directly to you. That's why you're going to be hearing a lot more from Dr. Fauci again. Not from the president, but from the real, genuine experts and scientists. We're going to make sure they work free from political interference and they make decisions strictly based on science and healthcare alone. Science and health alone, not what the political consequences are. The Vice President Harris and I and our entire administration will always be honest and transparent with you about both the good news and the bad. We will level with you when we make a mistake. We'll straight up say what happened. And I said at the outset, the honest truth is we're still in a dark winter of this pandemic. It's going to get worse before it gets better. It's going to take many months to get where we need to be. Progress from our plan will take time to measure as people getting infected today, they don't show up as case counts for weeks. And those who perish from this disease die weeks after their exposure. Despite the best intentions, we're going to face setbacks, which I will always explain to you. But I also know we can do this if we come together. That's why, ultimately, our plan is based on unity and all of us acting as one nation. It requires families and neighbors looking out for one another, healthcare providers, and business and civic and religious and civil rights organizations, and unions, all relying together on a common purpose with urgency and purpose and resolve.
Welcome back. President Joe Biden there, yesterday inside the White House, and literally in that minute or so that you heard, treating the American public like adults once again. I think anything that Joe Biden does in this presidency is going to feel like gold compared to what we've had these previous 4 years. I mean, it shouldn't feel that way, but in some respects, it will feel that way. And it is refreshing to see, and it's certainly refreshing to hear what you just heard. Somebody who is actually going to do his job. Make no mistake, there are going to be times where you'll be hearing me criticize him when I don't think he's doing what he should be doing. Hence what I had said on this podcast yesterday, which is that we need now to enact an agenda to push this administration, this brand new administration, to do the kinds of things we elected it to do. Now, obviously, the things that they are doing right now in terms of coronavirus, I think are very important, and I salute them 110%. Now, we do have to, as I said in yesterday's episode, put our agenda in play right now. This is the time to do this, as I've said. In fact, you will see at some point that I have put out a video about this need for us to start advocating and implementing and pushing an agenda and getting involved now in the process of contacting senators, contacting congresspersons, and making sure that we get involved, because that's what we're going to have to do in some way, shape, or form. I don't want to repeat anything that I said yesterday or preview the video that I will be releasing later on, that I spell out all of these things and what we need to do, what we should do, the kinds of steps we should take to become more politically active, particularly now. And you will see that video. I think I remember correctly. It's roughly 21 minutes long. Oh dear. But it is something I think you should watch. And it's funny, I start out, one of the things I will say about it is that I say, well, it's just a few moments. And of course, 21 minutes later, I say sayonara. But please do, if you do get a chance, if you have time, watch that video that I have done. And I will include a link to it in this particular episode as well. And it's available on the Politicrat Daily Podcast YouTube channel. President Biden has indeed hit the ground running in his first 24 hours. Let me say this again. In his first, because I believe I said it earlier, but in his first 24 hours in the White House, his first 24 hours in office, he has signed 25 executive orders. That's just a little more than one executive order per hour. I strongly recommend, and I will provide a link to this website as well. I strongly recommend that you do visit whitehouse.gov and that you visit it on a regular basis. If you have 15 minutes of your precious time, dear listener, I do suggest that you visit that website, whitehouse.gov, or even simpler than that, wh.gov. That's easier. wh.gov. Go to that website if you do have internet access, if you do have a computer or a phone of some kind. It's easier to read it on a laptop or a desktop or an iPad than it is to read on a phone. But I do recommend that you take a little time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, to look at the website. Look at the contact information. Sign up for updates. I really do want you to get involved. If you haven't already done this, I strongly recommend that you do it. Just get your headspace if you can, because again, as I do say often here, there's a lot of things going on in our lives that necessitate a lot of focus and attention, and we don't have the time, and I completely understand that. I mean, I've certainly got a lot on my plate as well, so I understand that there's lots of people who won't be able to spend the time for 5 or 10 minutes reading whitehouse.gov or wh.gov. I understand that. There's a lot of pressing concerns. But if you do have time, spend 5 or 10 minutes looking at that website. It's really, I like the way it's organized. And you will see every single thing that President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris are doing. Everything they are doing. Every single move they make, pretty much. It's kind of eerie to even say it like that. But it is the truth. It's a blueprint and a transcript of every single thing they have done so far. Statements, speeches, press conferences, transcripts of calls. There's one I saw with Vice President Kamala Harris and her call with the head of the WHO, World Health Organization, which, of course, Dr. Fauci, Tony Fauci, you remember him, announced the United States would be part of once again. He announced that yesterday. There's all kinds of really good bits of information on what's being done so that you know there is a transparency here so far that has been staggering. And it's the kind of transparency that we must have in government, in all government, whether it's federal, whether it's state, whether it's local. I think one of the things that I particularly noted about this website yesterday was on the homepage, at least as of this moment that I record this episode, on the homepage is an opportunity to download the PDF of the National Strategy for the COVID-19 Response and Pandemic Preparedness document. It's a 198 page document that President Biden mentioned and released yesterday during his comments when he was signing, just before he began to sign the 10 orders. In fact, the 10 additional executive orders, including the one about pandemic preparedness and a national strategy for COVID-19 response. I urge you to read that. If you can read that document, it's very detailed, it's precise, it tells you exactly how they're implementing this national strategy. It's staggering. I got to tell you, it is a breath of fresh air. There's opportunities to get in touch with the White House, whether it's social media wise, whether you want to sign up for updates. I think their phone number, I think there's the switchboard number. I don't remember the exact phone number, but I believe there's a switchboard number. You can leave a message with them. They had discontinued that under the previous administration. So you could not make a phone call in to the White House switchboard. They had completely dismantled that. I believe that is back now. Correct. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. It was really heartening to see Dr. Fauci actually looking 10 pounds lighter. And I'm not talking necessarily, when I say looking 10 pounds lighter, I don't necessarily mean his weight. I mean his emotions. He looked 10 pounds happier. He admitted as much in some of the remarks he made. It was really funny. I did get a glimpse, and it was around lunchtime here on the West Coast when all of this was going on. And there was this press conference. I guess it wasn't really, it was just a presentation signing these executive orders. But before that, actually after that, Dr. Fauci spoke in a press conference that was held by the White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki. And you could just see this guy was so much happier. Just effervescent. And he did say that there were things, obviously, during the last 4 years that were just not in keeping with science. It was just complete bunk, BS, garbage, crapola, dung. Of course, he didn't use those words, but you get the idea. And yeah, the press now, because the previous person is gone, is now looking for any little bit of news now. So they're trying to get Fauci to say something about the previous occupant. And he didn't really bite at it, but he did say that, yeah, it feels really good to be free, It feels good to be able to just speak and not worry about having to say something that was going to be challenged. Although Dr. Fauci, for the most part, really did stick to the script of science. I mean, he didn't deviate from that. I mean, not at all. I mean, some people may have complained that he wasn't forceful enough and he may have been a little unclear at the beginning. But that was because there was still things that we all did not know about this virus. So, but my goodness me, what a difference. He absolutely had a little twinkle in his eye, laughing and grinning, and my goodness me, it's like a new man. It was just great to see him just read statements. It's just him up there at the podium. I mean, Jen Psaki was, I think, at the side of the room, to the side of the White House press briefing room. And it was just Fauci by himself. There was no one hovering over him, There's nobody, standing, literally 2 feet from him in the camera shot, kind of looking imperious and looking, over him and looking at the press and giving them this malevolent death stare. And, there was nothing like that. It was breathe and breathe and breathe. That was the air and the tone of yesterday's press briefing with Dr. Fauci, dispensing information about all of these things that we need to know, including, the WHO, we know, is where the U.S. is once again, should never have been taken out of the WHO. Just one of the most asinine things that somebody could do. And I'm glad that President Biden swiftly restored this country as a participant in the WHO, a part of that organization, being part of the connection to that organization with funding and everything else. I mean, they revoked funding for that. I mean, that's what happened. Funding was revoked. That's what it was. Oh, we're going to just revoke funding from to the WHO. Because the WHO, the World Health Organization, relies very heavily on funding from the United States, government from the United States. We fund the WHO in large part. And the other guy said, oh, no, we're going to stop doing that. During a pandemic, no less. Real smart. But thank goodness that it was, Dr. Fauci who was trying to restore a little bit of sanity to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. President Biden, as I said, signed 10 more executive orders yesterday. including the one I just mentioned earlier about the COVID-19 response and pandemic preparedness. And there were a number of others. And one of the things that I wanted to point out is that these orders are staggering. He did an order that regarded travel, so that if people are traveling to the United States, they are required to quarantine. Now, I have not read the details of that particular order, but in the speech that President Biden gave, he spoke about the travel and that obviously federal buildings, mask wearing mandate, that was done on Wednesday. It was one of the first ones he did. And he also talked about travel. Yesterday, he talked about travel. And if you're traveling to the United States, you need to quarantine here. He did not mention for how many days. I'll have to go look that up. But that was one of the things he mentioned yesterday. So that's something that I think people should look at. These orders are all here in full. I mean, every part of the order, the whole text of it. I mean, every order is in full. If you like to read, you're going to have a lot of opportunities to read things here. I mean, the inaugural address is on the whitehouse.gov website. The readout, as I said, of the call that Vice President Harris had with the Director General of the World Health Organization is here. The executive order on establishing the Pandemic Testing Board. This is the one I'm, getting at from a few moments ago, and all the other things with COVID-19 preparedness. It's just fascinating. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm completely geeking out over here. This is really good. Oh my goodness me. Who knew that adults could actually govern? There's some adults in the room. My gosh. It really is something. The press briefing by Jen Psaki, the full transcript of that briefing. I don't remember there being full transcripts from the previous administration. I mean, there's every single word that was uttered at that press briefing yesterday is here. I'm looking at it right now as I speak to you. Every single word. Dr. Fauci. I mean, everything he said is there. Everything that was said. Every question that was asked of Dr. Fauci from the press. I mean, he's talking here, and I'm reading a part now. He's responding here, Dr. Fauci, to a question. Great question, Dr. Fauci says. Thus far, it does not appear at all that the South African strain is in the United States. However, we must be honest and say that the level of comprehensive sequence surveillance thus far is not at the level we would have liked. So we're going to be looking very, very carefully for it. But given the information we have today, it doesn't appear that the South African strain is here. I mean, every single word, and I'm scrolling through. I mean, I'm just going. I mean, this press conference, I only saw parts of it. Couldn't watch the whole thing, but everything is here. Every word that was spoken. It's just great. And I'm sure you could probably find some videos somewhere as well. I bet if I look and hunt around, I can find it. But please go to wh.gov. I will provide a link to it. It's amazing. It's amazing that you actually have this all here. Now, again, there is a lot of other things here. So somebody, by the way, asked, and I remember this because this is part of what I saw in the press conference yesterday. Somebody asked the press secretary, well, do you think that there's a bad example being set by the president? Because what happened? The Biden family weren't wearing their masks yesterday during the Celebration for America, which happened on Wednesday night, which got televised here in the U.S. During the prime time hours. That was the one with Tom Hanks, I believe, and Bruce Springsteen was on, and all kinds of people were on. And I believe there was a moment, I did not watch the whole thing, I only watched Bruce Springsteen and Tom Hanks near the beginning, and I think a brief snippet of Joe Biden and Vice President Harris at some point as well, giving a speech. But the reporter had asked, well, do you think they're setting a bad example? And the press secretary, Jen Psaki, said, well, I think let's not worry about a brief moment of them celebrating the occasion and the moment from earlier in the day on Wednesday. Can we, she's essentially saying, can we just stick to the more important thing, which is the fact that he signed an executive order for mask wearing for millions of people, for everybody on federal properties around the country? Should we not focus on let's focus on the more important thing? I mean, granted, of course, yes, should they probably have had a mask? Of course they should have had, not probably, they should have had a mask on. And I think that the press secretary kind of, she I won't say sideswiped that, but she, I shouldn't say trivialized it either, because that's not fair. I'd say more along the lines of dismissing it, or at least acknowledging it, but moving past it, because the issue was not that moment of all of the family members who I am sure have been tested 1 billion times, but was about strangers who are walking around on federal property without masks on, and Joe Biden, in the middle of a pandemic, President Biden wanted to make sure that that was one of the first things he did, and he did that. So there's always going to be that kind of thing. But it was a really good moment. I mean, yesterday, a good moment meaning all of Thursday with what President Biden has been up to, what he's been doing. I mean, all of these press briefings. There's a transcript of all of them. I'm looking at the section now, the briefing room section, press briefings. Both of the briefings that Jen Psaki has done, they're all transcripted. Both of them, every single word. If you've missed a word, and if you don't want to actually watch the press, because some people don't want to watch it, because then again, they've got a lot of different things they're doing. And to sit down and focus on watching it, a press briefing might be something that they can't do. So either you listen on the radio, you put it on the background, there's background noise if you're working from home. Or if, because that's what I do. I just put these things on background and then I'll walk over, and if there's something, let me just go over here and listen to this and watch it. But if you can't, just if you have a chance to read this, it's just incredible. So you've got all of these things. You can read the transcripts of speeches, remarks, statements, releases. There's a lot of the statements and releases. Pausing federal student loan payments. That was a statement from January 20th. That was the first hours of office. So the acting Secretary of Education will extend the pause on federal student loan payments and collections and keep interest rates at 0%. Too many Americans are struggling to pay for basic necessities and to provide for their families. They should not be forced to choose between paying their student loans and putting food on the table. So there you go. That was from the 20th. One of the things I'm going to be doing, certainly during the course of this calendar year, is reading to you some of the things that this administration is doing, whether they are positive, whether they are not positive. And I will, I'll have a few opinions about it, responses to it, reactions. But one of the reasons I'm doing this is so that you get to understand and get an idea of what is going on in government. I'm going to try to do this as best I can. I mean, it's not easy, but I'm going to try. And that also goes for the House and the Senate. At least I'm going to do that sometimes. I don't promise to do that every day. That's just a lot to do. It's just a lot to do. But I will say that, again, this is really this is good to see that we're seeing this kind of transparency. So that's all there. Statements, releases, presidential actions, all at wh.gov. Executive order on protecting worker health and safety. That's an important one. And let me just read that for a moment. And it's a relatively short one. The Secretary of Labor, through acting, this is protecting other categories of worker from COVID-19, and it goes into the Secretary of Labor acting through the Assistant Secretary of Labor for OSHA, Occupational Safety Health Agency, consistent with applicable law, shall do this, you know. This is just really great. This is really good. So that's an executive order on protecting worker health and safety. There is a whole task force that President Biden has. It is worth reminding you that there is a task force that he has. Dr. Marcela Nunez-Smith, I believe, is her name. Dr. Nunez-Smith, I definitely know that is her last name. She's going to be running that. She's in charge of administering and making sure that the processes for COVID-19 vaccines are being equitably distributed across the country, particularly into black and brown neighborhoods and indigenous neighborhoods, so that people are properly and equitably receiving the vaccine and the treatments, everything else. I mean, that's what she's doing. And then there's groups of other people in the task force who are doing other things with advice and all these other things that are going on. So that's something that you can be rest assured of. And as President Biden said yesterday, help is on the way. Help is on the way. The economic packages that he is going to be doing, he's announced some of that. And I believe there was a tweet that was sent out today that did talk about this in some more detail. Economic relief actions. In fact, that was today. He is extending moratoriums on evictions. He is extending the student loan pause, which I just mentioned. He's offering initiatives presenting initiatives for small business support, which is something that he has talked about doing. Of course, as you know, if you're someone who is a small business owner or knows someone who is, that's something that he has been on about quite a bit. And the other thing I think is worth reminding you of is that he is definitely looking to give out, this economic package where there's going to be, I think he's trying to push for another stimulus check for people. I don't know if you've received a stimulus check yet. I don't know if you have. But I know some people have. Executive orders. I just keep reading these. Executive order on supporting the reopening and continuing operation of schools and early childhood education providers. That was one of the executive orders, presidential actions from yesterday. Executive order on ensuring an equitable pandemic response and recovery. Now, that's what I just mentioned with Dr. Marcela Nunez-Smith, who is going to be in charge of that. By the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, in order to address the disproportionate and severe impact of coronavirus disease on communities of color and other underserved populations, it is hereby ordered as follows. And then there we go. He goes into that in detail there. That's an executive order on ensuring an equitable pandemic response and recovery. Executive order on a sustainable public health supply chain. Memorandum to extend federal support to governors' use of the National Guard to respond to COVID-19 and to increase reimbursement and other assistance provided to states. Executive order on ensuring a data-driven response to COVID-19 and future high-consequence public health threats. Executive order on improving and expanding access to care and treatments for COVID-19. Executive order on promoting COVID-19 safety in domestic and international travel. Now, that's the one where I mentioned a little earlier that there was going to be a policy involved in making sure that people who fly into the United States are to be quarantined and tested and should have had a test prior to getting on board the plane. And the order includes the masks must be worn in airports, commercial aircraft, in or on airports, commercial aircraft, trains, public maritime vessels, including ferries, intercity bus services, which is already happening here in San Francisco. I've seen people on buses wearing masks, and when on the rare occasions now that I'm on a bus, everybody has to wear a mask. It's a requirement. It's a mandate. It's something that we here in San Francisco do. And by the way, this should be happening in every city across the country. I would guess that it is. If you're in a city and the buses don't require that you wear a mask, can you let me know? I'm just curious. I really would love to know. So there's that, the international travel. You're required to prove. This is the point I wanted to get to a bit more clearly. This is Section 5 of this executive order, and it says you are required to 5AI. You're required to produce proof of a recent negative COVID-19 test prior to entry. Now, I haven't read or not whether there's a fine that's going to be levied in the United Kingdom, for example. Just yesterday, the Home Secretary Priti Patel announced that there would be an £800 fine for people who are gathering in large gatherings or at house parties of 15 people or more, whether legal or not legal gatherings. There will be an £800 fine, which is roughly, I think, around $975 US, something like that. Something like that. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. So the bottom line, though, is that each repeat offense, the fine will be doubled until the maximum fine of £6,400 is reached, and that the police will be enforcing that. Now, that's for house parties and also the travel situation. The United Kingdom have also banned travel from, any country unless there is, I think they've banned travel, period, into the United Kingdom. And if there is travel here, to the UK rather, there is a requirement to have a test that was taken no earlier than 72 hours before you board the plane, I believe. Or is it before you land? I forget which. And if you don't have documentation showing your negative COVID-19 test, showing that you have that test, showing that you have a test, then you will be fined. I forgot, I think it's £400 or £500 fine. And you may not be allowed in the country. And you could possibly serve or have a jail sentence term. So they are really getting very strict in the United Kingdom. And the United Kingdom now is almost at 100,000 deaths. We here are at 4 times that number. So this international part of this particular an executive order that President Biden signed yesterday talks about the COVID-19 testing for air travel. There's got to be a negative test result. That is the requirement. There's got to be a proof of the test result. They have to be should be required to provide. This is a little bit less stringent than Boris Johnson and the United Kingdom government. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see how this goes. I would love to get more detail about that, and there is a lot of detail here. Anyway, I think you get. I'm sure you get it. I mean, I've talked about this in detail because I think it's important. I think it's important to see what government is doing when government acts on your behalf and not on the behalf of multi-billionaires and to people who do not care about the everyday person. It is refreshing to see that this president, because we didn't have one for the last 4 years. There was no president in the White House in these last 4 years. That was not a president. This is a president.
Now, as I mentioned, the Senate will also conduct a second impeachment trial for Donald Trump. I've been speaking to the Republican leader about the timing and duration of the trial, but make no mistake, a trial will be held in the United States Senate, and there will be a vote on whether to convict the president. I have spoken to Speaker Pelosi, who informed me that the articles will be delivered to the Senate on Monday. Now, I've heard some of my Republican colleagues argue that this trial would be unconstitutional because Donald Trump is no longer in office, an argument that has been roundly repudiated, debunked by hundreds of constitutional scholars, left, right, and center, and defies basic common sense. It makes no sense whatsoever that a president or any official could commit a heinous crime against our country and then be permitted to resign so as to avoid accountability and a vote to disbar them from future office. Makes no sense. Regardless, the purveyors of this unusual argument are trying to delay the inevitable. The fact is, the House will deliver the article of impeachment to the Senate. The Senate will conduct a trial of the impeachment of Donald Trump. It will be a full trial. It will be a fair trial. But make no mistake, there will be a trial, and when that trial ends, senators will have to decide if they believe Donald John Trump incited the insurrection against the United States. Now, over the course of elections in November and January, the American people...
Well, that was Senator... That was Democratic. You know why I'm laughing. That was Senate majority. I shouldn't be laughing because this is really serious. That was Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, the Democratic senator out of New York. He stumbled like I remember this when Jane Sanders did this a year or so ago as well. When it was funny, it was in January, I think, January or February of 2020, when she said the same thing. She said the word erection and she meant election, but she said erection, and then she laughed, and everybody laughed at her, and you just heard there Senator Schumer say the same thing, the majority leader, saying whether he incited an erection. Well, oh dear. And then he corrected himself. Insurrection. It's incredible. We're living in this world. I mean, my goodness me. There were definitely people who, those 74 million people that voted for him, I'm sure some of them got really excited in that way. I mean, I'll never forget that particular person who interrupted Senator Schumer's press conference a week or two ago. I think I mentioned that here on an episode about a week or two ago, where there was a woman, she walked, and this is in Midtown Manhattan on the east side. I think it was 2nd Avenue because, Chuck Schumer, Senator Schumer was doing his press conferences. out there because of COVID-19. And the Smith and anybody in New York knows Smith and Walensky. It's a really, I'm not a steak person, but Smith and Walensky is one of those old-time New York steakhouses. It's been around for hundreds of years. I mean, hundreds of years. But anyway, so he did a press conference not far from there, and a woman, speaking of the misspeak there, and some, of the senator there saying erection, the woman just came up about 10 feet from him, and there was security around Senator Schumer at the time, and said, "You know what? I got sexually aroused when they charged the Capitol. I got so..." And I'm just shaking my head. And Senator Schumer just ignored her, I mean, but I've said this before, there are people like that. There are people like that who do get turned on by these really violent things. Jeez. Anyway, so the whole point here, let me get away from that. The whole point of what you just heard prior to my recitation of a really, really freaky and freakish and quite disturbing episode is this statement that was made today, on this day in the Senate by the majority leader, that the articles of impeachment will be delivered by the House impeachment managers on Monday. So there's going to be the ceremony. You know how they do it. They go and they're in processions of 2 by 2, and there's going to be, I think it's 8 impeachment managers, House impeachment man, and they will, like they did a year ago, deliver the articles. I mean, it was literally during this time a year ago, and they'll deliver the articles to the Senate floor. You'll see that, and that will be on Monday, the 25th of January. So that is what will happen. This process is going to begin. I would love for you, dear listener, if you are here in the United States, to contact your senators and find out where they are going to be on this Senate trial and whether or not they're going to vote to convict. There really is not going to be a whole mountain of evidence to even produce. Really, the House impeachment managers, what they're going to do, I'm sure, is show video. They're going to show video. I mean, I can tell you what the trial is going to be now. They're going to show you video of the orange one talking on January 6th. And the video is widely available. You can find it. I'm not sending links to that. Everybody, you can find it. And there's going to be video of the footage. There's millions of different angles and hours and perspectives of the footage of the terrorist attack. And I hope that the House impeachment managers, when the trial begins, I guess it's going to be sometime next week, I hope there is utterance of the word terrorist attack. Terrorists. This was not a riot, as I have repeatedly said. This was an organized, systemic terrorist attack. I've said that from the very day it happened. I've said that it's an inside job. I'm guaranteeing you that you're going to find out weeks, months, maybe a year from now that this was an inside job. There's already stories coming out from reputable news organizations that are saying this, that the FBI had information, that the Capitol Police, that all of this stuff was going on. This was an inside job, folks. And that ain't conspiracy speak. That is really not common sense. That is just logic. There is no way any kind of individual could breach the Capitol like this if it was not assented to. And I just think of the person who ended his own life, that Capitol Police officer. What do you think that he was going through to want to end his own life as he did? He ended his life Could be lots of things going on. I'm just saying to you that this was not a riot. This was well financed. You had Republican members of Congress all part of this, including that freshman. You know who I'm talking about. You know, the one that doesn't want to have her gun checked. And there were others yesterday in the House, Republicans. You know, they now are required to go through this magnetometer, this metal detector. You've got to go through it now in the House. And you've got 6 or 7 of these Republican congresspersons, freshmen mostly, who refuse. Oh, I'm not going through it. I'm not going through it. They should not be allowed in. And by the way, there should be a fine. And not just a fine, there should be some kind of censure on these Congress people who do this. And I think that after 2 or 3 of these, there should be some kind of hearing to remove these people, because they are a threat to national security. They are a threat to the administering of government business. You've got capitals now who are refusing to allow people to exercise open carry in the legislature, including Michigan. And they should have done that a long time ago. And now they are doing it. The United States House should be doing the very same thing, especially after what we saw there just over 2 weeks ago, a terrorist attack. And don't ever anybody tell you that this was a riot. Don't let anybody tell you that this was a mob. This was not a mob. This was an organized group. You may have had some rabble-rousers who acted unruly, but they're all terrorists. And the people who organized this were very strategic about it. Mobs don't have zip ties. Mobs don't have walkie-talkies. Mobs don't have tactical gear on and military gear on. And they don't have pipe bombs. Mobs are these spontaneous groups of people. And this was not a spontaneous anything. This had been planned for weeks. It had been planned on Facebook. If you had gone to some of these sites, you would have seen this stuff. It was out in the open. Like I say, this was known by people in government for weeks. They targeted this date of the 6th of January. So, come on. This was a total inside job. And I think the evidence will show me to be right again. Oh, I love being right, don't I? Oh, yes. Let me brag some more. But the evidence is going to show that. And these House impeachment managers, whenever that trial starts, and I hope it is going to be next week, certainly the articles will be Monday, so that means probably Tuesday or Wednesday they're going to start. And there's going to be witnesses, unlike the previous sham trial, the previous trial where there were no witnesses. Oh, God. Guaranteed this is going to be done. And I think they're going to convict. I think you're going to find enough senators. If you want unity, this is how you do it, through accountability and through justice. And I must say, I was not happy with the Senate Democrats today, saying that we're going to open up an investigation for ethics, an ethics complaint. It wasn't even, it was an ethics complaint against Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz. Come on now. I think you've got to do a whole lot better than that, Mr. Majority Leader. Senate Democrats are now in the ascendancy. They have the power now. They control the United States Senate. What I want Senate Democrats to do is to wield their power the way that Mitch McConnell wielded his power. Wield power the way that he did, ruthlessly. That must be the edict of the Senate Democrats. No mercy. You know how hard it was just to get the majority? And technically it's 50-50. It's a majority because we've got a vice president in Kamala Harris, a former senator herself, just a week ago. who is president of the Senate, and she casts the tie-breaking vote. Therefore, the Democrats have control of the United States Senate. This isn't a time to make nice. This is a time to be ruthless. This is a time for all of us to push these senators, both Democratic senators and Republican senators, to do the right thing. Whether it's on this impeachment trial, voting to convict. You can't let a terrorist walk free. You can't let them walk free. Bad enough, this guy pardoned Flynn, he pardoned this one, pardoned the other. These guys that committed war crimes in Iraq, oh no, they get to go free. I pardon them. I hereby pardon them. But he had no problem murdering black folk on death row. He had no problem murdering a woman on death row. He had no problem doing that. Oh, but, I pardon these murderers who killed Iraqi, who killed men, women, and children in Iraq. Oh, they get pardoned. You are pardoned. This guy's committed mass murder. You want to talk about the My Lai massacre back in the day. Oh, but no, these guys they just go free. Oh, those guys at Blackwater, and they just get to go free, and pardoned. Oh, pardon me. We can't be soft here. This is an attack on the seat of power. These guys are going to do this again. And there needs to be a deterrence, not just with 25,000 National Guard being stuck around the perimeter, but with actual teeth in the power that you have. Voters busted their humps to get John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock to the U.S. Senate. Organizers busted their rear ends to do that. Organizers busted their rear ends to make sure that Joe Biden would win the state of Georgia. Organizers did this. Grassroots, black women in particular. And they didn't do it only to see the majority leader issue a complaint, an ethics complaint. This moment demands more than that. We cannot go back to mediocrity. This is not what the American public, 81.2 million of them, voted for Joe Biden for. This is not going to be about build back better to get back to normal. Normal was not working for many millions of people in the United States. So I hope that you, dear listener, contact the majority leader, contact these Republican senators in particular, and start putting heat on them now. Do not wait until this trial begins. See, we cannot afford to be reactive anymore. We cannot afford that. This is what the video that I talked about earlier, in which I emphasize that we cannot afford to react to everything now. We have to be proactive. I talked about this a little bit yesterday in the episode as well. We must get proactive right now. If you've got 5 minutes, if you've got 10 minutes, please pick up your telephone, if you have a telephone, and contact 202-225-3121 or dial 202-224-3121. You must call these Republican senators. You will get through to the switchboard and then ask for one of these Republican senators. If you don't know their names, you can go to senate.gov. Senate, SENATE.gov. And what you do is then look up the senators. You'll see a tab that says senators. Click on it, and you'll see them. You'll see all of them. You'll see them with an R next to the name or a D next to the name. You can figure out pretty quickly. You will find out who they are. I want you to call the Republican senators in particular. Call your own senators. If you don't know who they are, you can type in your zip code, you can type in your state, and you'll be able to see who your two senators are. You'll find that out pretty quickly. I want you to call them. Ask them where they stand on impeachment. You're going to get through to one of their aides, or you'll get a voicemail. And if you get the voicemail, or no matter what, be respectful. Don't be rude to them. I trust that people who listen to this podcast aren't going to be doing any of those things. But I'm just saying to you, I want people to call these folks. Do not wait until the trial begins. We have a habit where we're always reacting to everything. And I get it that we do that. I do it. I'm definitely guilty of it. But we've got to be proactive. We've got to be more proactive. This is our time now. No more on the sidelines. We cannot be on the sidelines anymore. I really think that during those Obama years, a lot of us were on the sideline. We got active these last 4 years, though, didn't we? We attended the Women's March. I know I attended the first 3 of them. I know you did. You attended the Women's March. That very first one in 2017, when it was record-breaking, millions of people around the world took part in that march. It was literally, I think, the day after, or a few days after, maybe a day or two after, that guy got in to the White House, and there was just millions of people in 7 different continents. It's just incredible. Antarctica, they had people with signs, and I'm not kidding. You go look it up. Don't believe me. It was 7 continents. We got pretty darn active these last 4 years, didn't we? So let's continue that. Now that Joe Biden is in the White House, a Democratic president, an actual president, a real president, an actual living, breathing president, an American, an adult, a human being, we cannot afford to turn around and go home. We have to continue the activism that we continued in November and December and January of this year with John Ossoff and Reverend Raphael Warnock. We've got to keep that momentum going. There's so many issues. COVID-19, healthcare, women's right to choose, dealing with the police and completely changing how that's gone, because that has not worked, folks. Criminal justice reform, dealing with the death penalty, and all of these. There's so many things. DACA, which has now been reinstated, and then strengthening immigration and dealing with how that should properly be addressed. Climate, environment, we've got to be on top of that. Whatever your issue is, that's what I'm saying. We've got to be proactive. And in the case of this situation, with this impending impeachment trial, we have to be involved. Call your senators. Make sure they are on side. You get them on side. And as I said, if you get a voicemail greeting, do not be rude. Just leave the message and tell them, I'm a constituent and I want to make sure that you are going to vote to convict Donald Trump. That's what you should be saying. And if you're not, I'm going to be voting for someone else when you run next. You can put it like that. Simple as. If you get a Senate aide, ask that person, how is Senator whomever going to vote on the articles of impeachment for Donald Trump? Are they going to vote that he's guilty of them or not? And maybe you'll get some comment from the aide, or maybe you won't. Maybe the aide will say, well, Senator so-and-so hasn't made up her mind yet, but the point is, if you get that kind of response, be sure to say that if Senator so-and-so has decided, and if she or he decides to vote to acquit like they did last time, I will be organizing along with a coalition of people to make sure that that senator does not get another term. Make sure you say it like that. That's all. And they might ask you where you're from, what your zip code is, what city, whatever. But the point is that you make it clear that there's going to be an effort to try to run someone against them, or, not vote for them, or whatever it is. Make sure they're not going to have another term in the Senate. This is the kind of thing we have to do. Because I can sit here and say, well, an ethics complaint, which is really weak, against Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz. Come on. These guys are treason. They committed treason and insurrection and sedition. These guys were disputing the results of the certified elections. They were calling for this. They have to go. Come on. They have to go. Everybody knows they've got to go. I don't care that Ted Cruz was at the inauguration. So what? He was criticizing President Biden within 6 hours of Biden being in the White House, taking office. They're not wasting time, so we can't either. And I would definitely expect that you call Ted Cruz's office. I don't care if you know that he's going to vote to acquit or not. You need to call his office. You need to call Josh Hawley's office. Never mind the fact they shouldn't even be in the Senate. You need to call these Republicans. I'm going to have a link to the Senate.gov website as well. So there you have it. That's my bit on the Senate. And the news there that Chuck Schumer, the majority leader of the Senate, well, that has a better ring to it, doesn't it? By the way, he is the, as someone pointed out yesterday, the first Jewish politician to become the majority leader in the Senate. It's long overdue. My goodness me, really? And how long's the Senate been around for? We have a long way to go in this place. My goodness. It's just ridiculous. How many female majority leaders have there been? How many black ones? We don't have any black women in the Senate right now. And that's why I cursed a blue streak at Gavin Newsom, the governor of this state here in California, who decided to go with Alex Padilla. I get it. You wanted to put a Latino in, but come on. There are already two other Latinos, at least, I think 2 or 3 in the U.S. Senate. And you take a black woman. Well, you didn't take her. God, that's the wrong word to use. You respond to the departure of Vice President Kamala Harris from the Senate because she was Vice President-elect. She resigned her seat on Monday of this week, right? And you replace her, as he did last week or the week before, with Alex Padilla, who is the Secretary of State here in California, who, by the way, has not been always completely above board. He's been a decent Secretary of State, but he's been a nightmare as well. And he's a loyalist to Hillary Clinton, which is not an illegal thing. You can be a loyalist to somebody. I don't like the fact that Secretaries of State are tied to political parties. I've always believed that you should have independent Secretaries of State. I really do. And even though they are tied to political parties, most Secretaries of State do their job. Here's an example of it, at least from this past November. Brad Raffensperger, I don't want to sing his praises too much because he has played an active part in voter suppression in the past. Stacey Abrams, Brian Kemp, I can go through that again. But Raffensperger is a Republican, and it was a Trump supporter, by the way, and it didn't stop him from doing his job properly. which is all we're asking for from any Secretary of State. But Alex Padilla now is the junior senator here in California, and I'm not happy with it. I've aired that view on the Twitter network, as it were, and I've been very upset about that. Very disappointed. Not disappointed. I mean, I've had it with Governor. I always say Governor Newsom, Gavin Newsom. I've had it with him. Look, he's done some good things. I shouldn't go crazy here, but I really have had it though. You had three black women you could have picked, and he picked none of them. It's like, Karen Bass, the congresswoman out of Southern California, Los Angeles. He could have picked Barbara Lee, who is 13 miles away from here, across the bridge in Oakland, across the Bay Bridge. Well, she's in D.C., but you get what I mean. A progressive House member, Barbara Lee, who has been, she's led with distinction for years. She's the only one that voted against the Patriot Act, and I think against the invasion of Afghanistan or Iraq, I forget which. She stood tall on all these things. Oh no, but we're going to go with Padilla. And it was all a Democratic clubhouse move. One hand washes the other. Well, you've been good to me, Alex, because you got me in here as governor. I'm going to be good to you. That's how the game works. That's how politics works. That's how power works, if we're really being honest. And also, by the way, I should say, the DNC chair, Jamie Harrison, was announced, I guess, yesterday or the day before. Jamie Harrison, got throttled in his bid to become a senator. Lindsey Graham, of all people, absolutely destroyed him in that election in November. I'm sure he was the beneficiary of a lot of dark money from Mitch McConnell and others. And he just absolutely destroyed Jamie Harrison. And what does Jamie Harrison get for losing so badly? The DNC chair. He gets to be DNC chair, Democratic National Committee chair. How spectacular is that? Is that an example of failing upward too? What do you think? You know what I think. The answer is yes. Sure, he raises a lot of money for the Democratic Party. He was the South Carolina Democratic Party chair. Fine. But that alone should not be the way this works. But I know this is how power works. And you're telling me Stacey Abrams shouldn't be DNC chair? All she did was raise a ton of money. All she did was, with her organization Fair Fight, work her behind off. To get Joe Biden elected in Georgia, worked her behind off to get 2 Democratic senators from the state of Georgia going to Washington, D.C. 3 elections she helped win in the space of 2 months. And she had one stolen from her, not to mention that. Oh, but no DNC chair for her. No, nothing to see here. Oh, no. When you got the sexism, the misogynoir, the misogyny, the patriarchy, and the male peerage system that goes on. Yeah, you would have thought I was talking about the House of Lords in the United Kingdom. I'm talking about the peerage system in this country, where you are doing clubhouse politics. I like Jamie Harrison, but he shouldn't be DNC chair. Stacey Abrams should be, and I get it. If Stacey Abrams is contemplating a run for governor of Georgia in 2022, so be it. That's great. But that's even more of a reason why you should name her DNC chair. She has national visibility, and she would have even more in that role. I'm telling you, that is a mistake that the DNC made, whether deliberate or otherwise. They should have put Stacey Abrams as the chair of that organization. She could serve for a year or 2 and then run for governor. It would be a perfect segue. It would give her momentum. She's got so much momentum right now. Everybody around the country and beyond I mean, she was getting praise from all over the world about what she did to get these two Democratic senators elected, these two gentlemen, Warnock and Ossoff, and what she did to get Joe Biden elected. I know there were other groups. I've spoken about the other groups that helped with this. But Stacey Abrams spent a decade plus doing this. And she's rewarded with nothing. And I just think, again, look, I'm not one who looks for praise personally. If it comes, that's nice. I'm not going to sneeze at it or be nasty and ingracious. I'm someone that likes to give praise. And like I say, I said this before on social media, if you're doing the work and you're doing good work, you're going to hear good things from me. And when I invite guests on, I mean what I say. When I praise them and I say that these people are good people, and I say that, I'm not just saying that. I mean it, You will hear me on this podcast many times talk to people and praise them. And that's genuine. That's not for anything. That's genuine. These people are doing really good work, hard work out here, positive work. And it doesn't take anything away from me to praise them as such. I'm not envious or jealous of anybody, And I get it. These are human emotions, envy and jealousy, but they're not necessarily good. I don't think they're good emotions, but people have them, right? People have them. And they may say it jokingly or playfully, but people have those emotions though. For real. Sometimes it's said in a throwaway way, a throwaway line. And sometimes it's meant seriously, and then sometimes it's really serious, where someone won't say it, that they're envious, but they really are, And that could be, again, anyway. Stacey Abrams has done an excellent job, and she should have been rewarded. I think every one of us, if we're being honest, we know that that's the truth. We know that that's the truth. She auditioned for VP, and someone said to me on Twitter, well, maybe she doesn't want the job. And she said, but respectfully, maybe she doesn't want the job. And the person said, but I could be wrong. And, again, I appreciate that. So I'm not saying that the person said that she didn't want it outright, because my whole thing is, there's no way that a person would not want the DNC job, particularly if they are in politics. Some people might say, oh, the DNC, it's a thankless task. Oh, my God, all the politicking. Oh, my goodness. But most people are going to go for that job. And Stacey Abrams, I think, in her heart of hearts, probably would have wanted that job, whether or not she runs for governor of Georgia in 2022. And I think she's going to end up running, by the way. I won't be surprised. She's got all this momentum. I think she'd be crazy not to run in 2022 for Georgia governor. I think she'd be crazy, because by the time that happens, the demographic shift is going to be even greater. More black and brown people. She would be out of her natural mind if she did not run. All I'm saying is that the platform for her would have been absolutely primed to the pump had she been named DNC chair. I mean, that is a position that has a lot of power in it. And the notion that she wouldn't want that job, no, that doesn't wash with me, quite frankly, because there's a lot of power in that job. You get to dictate the national agenda for the Democratic Party. You get to organize things. You get to say who's going to do what with what, which direction is this party going in. You get to organize all this stuff with the politics. You get to really point where this party goes, structure of it, everything, especially in this 21st century. That's a lot of power to have. Now, I don't think that Tom Perez did a good enough job. I don't think he was a good DNC chair at all. And it's a 4-year term. There's no mandatory service. You don't have to serve all 4 because we've seen this. People have resigned. People have been fired. So it'll be interesting to see what Jamie Harrison does. I welcome him. But I just lament Stacey Abrams. I mean, Stacey Abrams should absolutely... I mean, the notion that she doesn't want the job, I mean, my God, did you see her all over the TVs, all over your TVs the last year? When she was wanting that VP, she made no bones about it. Don't you remember? She made no bones about wanting to be the VP. She appeared with Joe Biden in several situations on MSNBC. I mean, she was all over you couldn't get her off your television set, your TVs. You couldn't get her off your TVs. She was everywhere. And then she didn't make it. She didn't make the cut. Oh, God. I wonder how she feels about that personally. She was everywhere. And she was good for her. I'm not criticizing her. She was out there all over the place and made no bones. Yeah, I'm here. I'm here for it and I want it. Now what you gonna do? I mean, that is exactly the posture that she took. I'm here, deal with me. I'm coming for the VP spot. I'm coming with deep. I want that VP spot. I'm here. Come on. I'm here. Hello, Joe. I'm here. I mean, that was Stacey Abrams. Don't tell me that she didn't want this. I'm not. By the way, I'm not addressing this to the person on social media. I have maximum respect for any person who engages on this topic. I'm not trying to do anything like that in terms of. I'm just saying generally. This is my response here is general. It's not to this person. Somebody who is out there advertising for VP and pretty much setting out her stall. I mean, someone who's setting out their stall for vice presidency is not somebody who is going to say that she does not want the DNC chair job. Trust me on that. I know that DNC chair and VP are 2 different things. Some might argue that DNC chair is more powerful. But not in this administration and not in recent administrations. We've seen the maybe decades ago, maybe back in the 50s or into the 60s, well, before the 60s, we could say that perhaps. But from the 1960s on, vice presidents in America, and you might say even in some parts of time in America before the 1960s as well, but particularly from the 60s onwards, vice presidents took a very important role, and even more so the last 20 years. Dick Cheney, we know how consequential he's been, or he was. You know? Joe Biden as well, by the way, when he did all the stuff with the economic response to the last depression, or really that was a great recession. Great in quotes, nothing great about it. What we saw, of course, well, I don't even want to talk about these last 4 years. You know, but we've seen this, right? But so come on, somebody who is out there going, pick me, is not going to be saying, I don't want the DNC job. And if she did say that, which is possible that she may have done in her heart of hearts, if she did say that, she was focusing, I'm sure, with an eye toward 2022 and running for governor. But heck, have the whole enchilada. Go for both. And I'm sure that she would. She'd be DNC chair. She'd absolutely she'd co-sign for that now, wouldn't she? It just is a perfect. This is how politics gets played. You know this. It's stepping stones on the ladder, stepping stones across the pond, stepping stones. And this is how it is. This is how power gets wielded. People are positioned like chess pieces on a board. And the grand master or grand mistress gets to move those pieces. DNC chair has a lot of power. Just ask Donna Brazile how much power that has. How she had that as a DNC chair. And she wrote all about this, by the way, in a book called Hacks, Hacks, which really gets into some of the grimy stuff that goes on. And she talks about Hillary Clinton as well, after that election that she lost in the Electoral College. Got to read that book. And she took a lot of heat, did Donna Brazile, for writing that book, because she was writing the truth. That's why people were so upset with Donna Brazile. So, yeah, the DNC chair has lots of power, folks. And either you wield it ruthlessly or you don't. Like I said before, you have to wield power ruthlessly. Democrats do not do that. When they have the power, when they have the gavel, they're all, well, let's come together and bipartisanship and kumbaya. But when the Republicans have power, they don't have a gavel. They have an axe. They have an axe, they have a sledgehammer, they have a chainsaw. That's how they wield power. And I know that conjures up all kinds of gruesome things, but that is metaphorically what the Republicans have done to this country called the US of A. They've taken an axe and a sledgehammer and a chainsaw to it, especially these last 4 years, but over the last 60 plus years. Especially from the 1980s onwards, the last 40 years. But we have to be ruthless, and that's the whole point. As Democrats, the Democratic Party needs to be ruthless. And I'm telling you, if you had Stacey Abrams as the chair of the DNC, I dare say that she would be taking some names already. You know, we've had some very milquetoast DNC chairs. We had one who, of course, helped to screw over someone who caucused with the Democrats. I'm not going to go through that again from 4 years ago. But you know who I'm talking about and who got screwed over. And there's all kinds of documents that the Russians and WikiLeaks procured that shows all this. Power is there, and we have to wield it. And especially now when these Republicans are plotting to try to take back the House and the Senate, are you kidding me? We have to really start to get going here. And look at what's going on. I'll be right back. Welcome back. This is the 48th anniversary. My goodness me, I can't believe the time has gone by that quickly. This is the 48th anniversary of Roe versus Wade, the United States Supreme Court decision that was handed down on January the 22nd, 1973. The decision said that women have a right to an abortion. That's really the shorthand of it all. And abortion did not become legal nationwide until that Supreme Court decision. We've had legalized abortion in the United States for 48 years, exactly 48 years now. But as we've seen over the last 20 years plus, 30 years, there have been attempts by the Republicans to whittle away and chip away at Roe versus Wade, whether in state regulations and state laws or whether in Supreme Court situations. And the Supreme Court, as it is presently constituted, is a court that leans so far right that it's almost off the charts going left. Because you've got now 6 conservative Supreme Court justices, 3 of them at least, extreme conservatives. Alito, Thomas, Kavanaugh. Make it 4. Amy Coney Barrett. Can't forget her. All four of them are extreme conservatives. Neil Gorsuch, he leans that way too. But I think he's somebody who has, on one or two occasions, voted with the more left-leaning, if you will, the democratic, if you will, Supreme Court justices. So is John Roberts, the Chief Justice, who, of course, administered the oath for Joe Biden 48 hours ago. On Wednesday of this week, 20th of January, 2021. Now, there is an Obamacare case that's being heard, California versus Texas. We should get a decision on that sometime between now and June, when the present Supreme Court term wraps up. So we will hear that. We'll find out how they did with that. A lot of people are saying that they think it's going to be a compromise where most of the Obamacare Affordable Care Act will be upheld, but there'll be maybe some other things around the edges that are struck down. We'll see. But this is a day that I really do care and worry about. I care about all these other things too, but I am worried about the likelihood of Roe versus Wade being overturned. And thank goodness now we do have a majority. Well, thank goodness now we do have control of the Senate, control of the House, and of course, control of the White House, the executive branch. What we do not have is control of the U.S. Supreme Court. And there had been talk when this ridiculous... See, when you talk about wielding power, Mitch McConnell didn't give a rat's about, there's an election going on. No, he did something that he wanted to do. And he wielded power. And I might not like the way he did it. You may not like the way he's been doing it. He's been doing all kinds of things that are, I think, a danger and, quite frankly, unconstitutional, and has destroyed the Senate. He wielded power to the point of destroying the Senate. I'm not going to let Merrick Garland have a hearing, as he's supposed to have under Article 1 powers. The Senate is part of Article 1, and it is about advice and consent. And no, Mitch McConnell refused to do that, violating his oath as a senator. Oh, no, I'm going to let Merrick Garland just twist in the wind for 11 months. But, Amy Coney Barrett, I'm going to ram her through here in 50 days. From the super spreader event to the last few days of October, like 29th of October, whatever it was of October, he got her through. She got confirmed. It's not even 50, it was barely 50 days. If I do my math correctly, it was something like 40-something days, 47 days. Might have been less than that, anyway. From the time that Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she hadn't even been buried yet. And you all forget, well, not you. Some people forget this. You remember, you cast your mind back to September the 18th of last year, 2020, when, God help us, it was horrible. It was so heartbreaking to know that Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the Supreme Court Justice, had passed away. And within an hour of that news being released publicly, you had then Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell releasing a letter on Twitter. Oh, yes, we're going to fill this seat. Yeah, he wanted to fill a seat then. The woman hadn't even been buried yet. Oh, but can you delay the impeachment trial? Can you delay it? We need to act in the spirit of bipartisanship here, and the Senate's got to be. I was spoken with the majority leader, and now there's an obligation on the part of the Senate to be bipartisan. This trial should be delayed. No, it shouldn't be delayed. It shouldn't be delayed. Just like Merrick Garland should not have been delayed. He should have been heard from. You didn't say that anything should have been delayed when it came to Amy Coney Barrett. Oh, no. We're going to ram her through and seat the Supreme Court Justice. Oh, but now, you want to delay the trial of a seditionist and a terrorist. Oh, no, we're going to delay the impeachment trial. Oh, I want to delay it. I want to delay. We can't have an impeachment trial. I mean, the one I had was there were no witnesses to be called and only one camera. And now half the Senate was sleeping. They were Republicans, and they were twiddling their thumbs and looking at their phones. And I say that when I ran this trial, we didn't have any witnesses. And that's American. I mean, come on. Oh, but now, I want to delay the trial. Can we delay it? Oh, Mr. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, can we delay it? And Chuck Schumer's like, you just heard the clip I played? Well, you heard it that was a half hour plus ago that I played that. I should play it again, but I'm not going. But you heard the Majority Leader. Hell no. I'm not delaying Jack. Gee, come on. I'm not delaying anything. Speaker Pelosi and I had a conversation, and she said these articles will be delivered on Monday. Now sit down, Mitch boy. I mean, see, I can criticize Senator Schumer and I can praise him at the same time. We don't want any ethics complaint for seditionists like Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz. We don't need ethics complaints. Ethics complaints. Or for Rudy Giuliani. Well, the New York State Bar Association is going to remove him from its membership. What about removing his law license? See, but again, the rules for white men, it's like stepping on ants. They get special privilege and affirmative action for white men. They get to desecrate the Capitol in a terrorist act, and they get ethics complaints. It's not funny, but it's funny. It's funny, horrific. Oh, yeah, but don't you know? These were patriots. They weren't terrorists. They had a grievance. This white guy had a grievance. He wants to let off some steam. Don't you understand? He's a juvenile delinquent. He wants to let off some steam. Oh, God. Yeah, honestly, the excuses that get made, and that's why I came down really hard on this stuff with, look, I get journalists have a job to do. I'm not attacking that. I think they risk their lives to give us these pictures and these stories. They've lost journalists. They've been killed giving us coverage of things around the world, wars, all kinds of things. But I'm sorry, I'm not all about looking at footage. Oh, the exclusive footage shot by this person at this magazine. No. White violence is getting too much praise and too much attention. It should be known. I'm not saying you shouldn't see the video. But I wonder if this would have been the same if it would have been someone else. Maybe, maybe not. But I am not with all this republishing and rebroadcasting of these kinds of violent acts. I mean, it's the same thing with, I felt this way with the 9/11 terrorist attack as well. And that's the last previous terrorist attack we've had in this country. And I want people to start linking the two together. No, they're not the same thing. I get that. But I want them to be talked about as two terrorist attacks, separate and apart. But the thing that they do have is that they were both attacks on the United States government. You can't tell me that a plane flying into the Pentagon was not. You can't tell me that that wasn't an attack on the U.S. government. It's part of the U.S. government. It's the Pentagon. Defense Department. What could be more of an attack? I mean, come on. Come on now. And charging the Capitol and storming it and invading it and killing people, that's not a terrorist attack? Oh, please. Come on. People are you want to be so nice. You want to be so nice to them. And if that was black folk doing that, attacking the very building they built, you would be calling them out of their name. You'd be calling them everything but a child of God. You know it. Come on. You know that's true. I'm not sitting here making that up. Come on. You know that's true. And they would be dead by now. There'd be 55 deaths, not 5. I'm not trying to keep a scorecard. I'm just trying to tell you what you know to be true. I'm not even trying to tell you. It is the truth. Whether I say it or not. It's just, oh dear. I was talking about Roe versus Wade, wasn't I? Roe v. Wade. I am gravely concerned about Roe v. Wade. I want to believe that it's going to be a Supreme Court precedent for evermore. And long may it be for all our days and more, right? For eternity. For all of time. And I really do hope and pray that happens. But one of the things we've got to do now, speaking of being ruthless and being proactive, is to make sure that we put pressure on President Biden to fill these benches with federal judges who are forward-thinking, progressive judges, not these milquetoasty judges, not right-wingers. I know Biden's not going to do that. And we want some black women on that federal bench. There's like maybe 5. There's hardly any black women on the federal bench. There are a billion, and I know some of them, not personally, but I know of some of them. You've got to hire these people. That's another mission that I've got, is to have President Biden, hire black female federal judges. I mean, all this last guy did was put in white male and white female right-wing judges, all under the age of 35. All of them, pretty much. So they get to be on the federal bench for 40, 50 years. Right? That's a generation, 2 generations. Maybe even close to 3. Right? Generation, 20 years, 15 years, whatever. Right? That's nearly 3 generations. I mean, come on. And the extremist views of these folks who believe that women should be barefoot and pregnant. I mean, that's what some of these people, there's some wackadoodle judge who's on the federal bench now. And she's a woman of color too. I hate that term, woman of color, but again, she's brown. She's from I forget. She may have some background in South Asia, and I think her name's Naomi Rao or something like that. And she is a wackadoodle. I mean, she believes things like this. It's easy to get people who worship patriarchy to revel in stuff like this and to say that women shouldn't have a place. Like that flag pin wearing, that 1972 pin wearing blankety blank who spoke at the Republican National Convention with her 1972 pin on. Oh, it's the year before Roe v. Wade. I'm going to wear a 1972 pin. And she was a white woman, racist, and there's a video of her ranting and treating and saying stuff about her kid and saying some just disgusting things. And she got up there with a 1972 pin on, her brooch that said 1972 on it. I mean, this is she was talking pure handmade tale tosh. That's what she was talking. Utter garbage. Handmaid's Tale. That's what she absolutely represented. I mean, I think that, God, I forget her last name. Margaret, whoever, I forget her last name, who wrote The Handmaid's Tale, right? You know who I'm talking about. But again, in the older age, you lose brain cells and you can't remember. So, Margaret, whomever, who wrote The Handmaid's Tale, right? She'd be cringing at this woman. She'd cringe at her. 1972 pin. You don't even know what you're on about. I pray that this decision stays intact. And we need to make sure it does. And I know there was a lot of talk about packing the court, and that's when I went off in this long tangent. I am back to where I started from 15 minutes ago, I think. But, we need to get judges on the bench. I don't know, packing the court, should we have another couple of Supreme Court justices? Maybe we should. I'm not against the idea. What do you think about that? Should we bring it to 11? Should we change the rules about the number? Should we limit the lifetime termage to, say, 20 years as opposed to lifetime? I mean, again, we've had people literally die, right, in that job. Not as they were doing it, but you know what I mean. I mean, look, we just had one last September. We had one in February of 2016. We had one bought off, basically. Justice Kennedy, who I think was bought off and bribed off. And we'll never know about that, but we should know about that, right? Ivanka Trump and I'm here and yes, Justice Kennedy. Happy birthday, Justice Kennedy. Happy birthday to you. Now, can you resign, please, so I can get Justice Kavanaugh or someone like Justice Kavanaugh who attacked women? Can you resign so I can get him on the bench? This is your Ivanka talking. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We need to have a better Supreme Court. It's been corrupted. And with that, and there's a great book that talks about some of the history of this too by Tom Hartman about the U.S. Supreme Court and what's being done to it and has been done to it over generations. We need to have a better Supreme Court. And we can't keep lurching to the right. In fact, if it was lurching to the left constantly, I really would want that the Supreme Court is supposed to have a semblance of balance to it. But there has not been, by the way, because it hasn't been lurching left. Actually, I'm going to amend what I said. We need to have it lurching left, for God's sake. So we've not had a democratically controlled, meaning more democratic leaning or democratic Supreme Court justices. We've not had that since 1955 or 53. That's the last time we had a majority Democratic Supreme Court. 1955, 53, 1953. Come on. That's 70 years ago. Almost 70 years ago. That should tell you something. We need to make an alteration to this court. Can't have this. So the last 70 years, that's why it's so consequential who you have in the Senate, who you have controlling it, who you have in the Senate and in the presidency. Because now, God forbid, if someone passes away, a Democratic president can appoint that person, or that person's replacement, I should say. You're not going to appoint the person who passed away. Right? And then you've got a democratically controlled Senate who are not going to stand down, right? When you've got a nominee there waiting to be heard from. They're not going to refuse to give that person a hearing. This is why voting really does count. I keep saying this. We've got to start trusting that. No matter what this clown said for 4 years, no matter what your own cynicism might be about this. We've seen evidence before our eyes and on our TVs that voting counts, that your vote counts. We've seen it. Georgia. That's just one example or 3 examples. We need to have a bigger court. And we need to have federal judges that are forward-thinking, not stuck in 1972 or 1952 or 1932. We need federal judges, right, who are going to take us to the 21st century, not into the 19th century, where a lot of federal judges are now in the United States. Because this guy, with Mitch McConnell's help, ushered in something like 300 plus or 400 plus judges. I played that audio months ago of that pastor from that church in Atlanta or wherever it was, talking about how many judges that this guy had put in with Mitch McConnell's help. That's one of Mitch McConnell's big things, is how many federal judges he's put on the bench and blocked Obama from the last 2 years of Obama's second term. Blocked all those appointments, including Merrick Garland. Roe v. Wade. May you live forever. And to all the women of this country and any other country, what you do with your body is your business. Is your business. Not mine, not any other man's, not the government's, but yours. Thank you very much for your patience today. I want to just say a couple of other things quickly before exiting stage left on this episode. Thank you for your indulgence. I know it's a long episode. I have been known to do a few of those. If you are a regular, I can't even talk, a regular listener. So, by the way, thank you for your time. I want to say really quickly, though, I have launched another website. It's called Writing More, WRITING, M as in Mike, OORE.com, writingmore.com. And obviously that's my last name, Moore, which is part of the website address, and not by accident. You will see my writings in one place, pretty much everything. I mean, at least over the last 10 years or so. Not every single thing I've ever written, but a portion of what I've written over the last 10 years, certainly. And there'll be more added to it. And I'll be doing some notes as well. You'll find on the webpage a blog with some of my thoughts on the writing process, on writing, on getting you to write something, even when you don't feel like it, getting yourself to write something if you even may be someone who's suffering from depression. And I know for people who do suffer, and I know people who suffer from depression and who are diagnosed as clinically depressed. And perhaps you know people in that position. Maybe you may be one yourself who is in that position. And I have so much empathy for you. It must be extremely difficult every day. I delicately as I can and sincerely as I can posit in the blog note that you will see if you go to writingmore.com, and I will include a link. WRITINGMOORE.com, Writing More. And you will see a blog post on that homepage about trying to write something, even when you don't feel like it, even when you may be completely out of any kind of desire to write. I think you will hopefully find that to be of some efficacy. So I launched that. That site is launched now. It was launched basically at the crack of dawn. Not even before the crack of dawn, actually. So lots more to come from there. You can look at my writings there. You will see the different areas and disciplines that I have been engaging in terms of writing. There's more to come on that score. And also, of course, the Politicrat.com, which, of course, is a website for this very podcast. Content will be added. Some things, including this video that I have been talking about that I did. Very important, I think, if you can spare 21 minutes. If you can spare that. And also this review of this movie, The Incident. That's the last thing I want to touch upon. The Incident, which this movie scares me. It does. And I've seen so many movies, as have you. And The Exorcist from 1972 or 3. Seeing that in the movie theater, oh my God. Sweaty palms. But this movie that I saw on the small screen just a few days ago, The Incident from 1967, oh my goodness me. It still terrifies me. Why? Because human beings, right? There are things in us and about us that scare us, right? I mean, that's what this movie is about. And it just scares the living daylights out of me. Because this is true, right? Well, you haven't seen the film, some of you. And I'm not going to give it away. I have written a review about this, and I've linked the review. And I also did a video on this too, which I love to do videos. You know, I did a video on this as well. About this, and it's considerably shorter than 21 minutes. It's only about 6. But The Incident is a film you've got to watch. I find it to be I've actually seen it twice. Which, actually, no, that's not true. I've actually seen it 1.5 times. Because the second time around, I said, nah, I'm not going any further. And again, it's not a violent movie. That's not the issue. It's the psychology that is so much more terrifying. The scar, right? That is what is more terrifying, right? The scar that's left behind, many occasions, than the actual physical damage that is done. And so this movie takes place in New York City on a subway car, one subway car. And these 14 people, and this is late at night. This is 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, 3 a.m. And the relationships you get to see, the interaction and the dynamic, I'll just leave it at that. And then these 2 male terrorist thugs come on board that subway train, into that carriage. It seems like that's the only carriage what's interesting is that if you do decide to watch this, it's shot in black and white, which is very rare for films post 1965. Really, it's very rare. But the black and white quality is the key to this film, because I don't think this film would have worked had it been in color. I don't think it would have worked. Not the way it does work. And so, this train has got 10 cars in it, and literally there's only one car that seems to work. Oh, dearie me. That's kind of another whole story. But you got to watch this film. It's directed by Larry. Oh, the rain is falling. Oh, dear. You can hear that. Don't you just love the sound of rain hitting the glass? Hitting the glass. A moment of natural beauty amidst all this human horror that I am describing for this movie, The Incident. And, oh dear, I shouldn't go any further. I'm going to leave it where it is. I really am, because you've got to watch this movie. It's directed... this rain is quite addicting to listen to. I'm actually blanking on this director's last name. And I said it before. Larry is his first name. Pierce is his last name. I got it. Peerce. Larry Pierce. And he knew what he was doing when he directed that movie. And you can read my review. I don't give anything away in the review, which is at More on Medium, as I call it, medium.com. I will provide a link. In fact, it's in the liner notes for this episode. You got to watch The Incident. It is not comfortable viewing. You will find it to be uneasy. I will tell you that now. And if you don't like movies that make you uncomfortable, then probably you want to skip this one. But I do think that it is worth your while to watch this movie, as uncomfortable as you may be. As the rain falls, I wish you all a great weekend. Of course, I'll be back here tomorrow with another edition of the Politicrat Daily Podcast. Thank you very much for listening to this edition of the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore.